First Contact's Price. The void between stars held its breath as Captain Alina Santos watched her ship's sensors track the approaching Nexian vessels. The UES Prometheus hung motionless against the backdrop of space, its experimental quantum drive humming at the edge of consciousness, a sound that had become as familiar to Alina as her own heartbeat over the past 3 years. "They're broadcasting again, Captain," Lieutenant Chen reported from his communications station, his voice carrying a hint of bitter amusement. "The Nexian commander insists we power down our primitive fusion drives and prepare for inspection. They're calling us interesting specimens." Alina's fingers traced the smooth surface of her command chair, feeling the subtle vibrations of the ship's systems beneath the polished metal. The Prometheus might look conventional to outside observers, all sleek lines and standard human design philosophy, but appearances were deliberately deceiving. Behind its unremarkable exterior lay humanity's greatest technological achievement, the first successfully tested quantum probability drive. "Acknowledge their transmission, Lieutenant," Alina ordered, her dark eyes fixed on the tactical display where 12 Nexian warships moved with mathematical precision to surround her vessel. "But maintain our current status." The Nexians had emerged 6 months ago, their crystalline ships appearing at the edges of human space. They brought with them advanced technology and an unshakable belief in their own superiority. First Contact should have been a moment of celebration for humanity. Instead, it became a lesson in humiliation. The Nexian Empire, spanning hundreds of systems, had taken one look at human technology and dismissed them as barely spacefaring primitives. They didn't even consider humanity worth conquering, just studying, categorizing, and eventually relocating to more suitable habitats for their own good. "Multiple targeting locks detected," Security Chief Raman announced, his usually steady voice tight with tension. "They're powering up their particle lances." Alina straightened in her chair. This was the moment Earth Command had been waiting for, the perfect opportunity to demonstrate why underestimating humanity was a devastating mistake. The Nexians, with their rigid adherence to technological hierarchies, couldn't conceive that a species they deemed primitive could pose any real threat. "All hands, battle stations," Alina commanded, her voice carrying through the ship's communication system. "Initiate Protocol Omega." The Prometheus's systems began to shift, quantum processors spinning up as they prepared to do the impossible. The ship's conventional drives were just a facade. The real power lay in the quantum probability matrix that Dr. Sarah Chen, Lieutenant Chen's mother, had theorized could bend the very fabric of reality. "They're demanding our immediate surrender," Lieutenant Chen reported, unable to keep a slight smile from his face. "They say resistance would be mathematically impossible." "Send them our response," Alina ordered, allowing herself a small smile of her own. "Just as we planned." Chen's fingers danced across his console, transmitting the simple message in all known Nexian dialects. Mathematics is a language. Humanity speaks many languages. The Prometheus's quantum drive spun up to full power, and reality began to twist. The principles behind it were elegantly simple. Instead of trying to overcome the laws of physics, the drive simply shifted the ship to a parallel probability, where those laws worked in their favor. The Nexian ships opened fire, their particle lances cutting through space, and missing completely as the Prometheus existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. To their sensors, the human vessel would appear to be everywhere and nowhere at once. "Quantum field stable," Chief Engineer Puddle reported from engineering, her voice steady despite the enormous energy she was handling. "Ready for probability cascade on your mark." Alina took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This single engagement would determine humanity's future among the stars. Execute cascade sequence. The space around the Prometheus rippled like a stone thrown into a cosmic pond. The quantum probability field expanded outward, catching the Nexian ships in its embrace. Their crystalline hulls, designed to withstand conventional weapons, offered no protection against weapons that rewrote probability itself. One by one, The mighty warships of the Nexian Empire began to fail as impossible things became inevitable. Hull breaches appeared where structural integrity should have been absolute. Weapons backfired with mathematical precision. Navigation systems plotted courses through their own ships. Target the flagship, Alina ordered as the Nexian fleet fell into chaos. Show them exactly what primitive humans can do. The Prometheus shifted through quantum states, appearing directly in front of the Nexian flagship. Alina imagined she could see the shock on their alien faces as they realized the truth, that humanity hadn't been behind in the technological race. They had simply been running on a different track entirely. Message from the flagship, Chen reported, his voice tight with suppressed emotion. They're asking for terms. Alina stood from her command chair, looking at the stunning view of the crippled Nexian fleet. Tell them that humanity offers the same terms we originally sought, peaceful cooperation between equals, and suggest they update their mathematical models regarding primitive species. As the Prometheus's quantum field stabilized and reality settled back into its normal patterns, Alina knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had earned its place among the stars not through brute force or overwhelming technology, but through their ability to think beyond established boundaries. The price of first contact had been high, but the lesson it taught would echo through the galaxy. Never underestimate a species that turns impossible into a challenge rather than a limitation. The weight of stars. 6 months earlier, Lunar Research Station. Dr. Sarah Chen stood before the assembled military and scientific leadership of Earth, her hands steady despite the weight of the moment. Behind her, a holographic display showed the schematics of what she called the quantum probability drive, humanity's answer to the Nexian threat. Conventional physics tells us what we can't do, she explained, her voice carrying through the silent chamber. But quantum mechanics tells us that impossibility is simply a matter of probability. We're not trying to break the laws of physics, we're shopping for new ones. Admiral James Rodriguez, the head of Earth Defense Command, leaned forward in his seat. The bags under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights spent watching Nexian ships systematically dismantling human outposts. In plain English, Doctor, can this device give us a fighting chance? Sarah's eyes flickered to the latest casualty reports scrolling across her tablet. Another research station, relocated by the Nexians, its crew now subjects in their behavioral studies. It gives us more than that. Admiral, it gives us an advantage they can't comprehend. The quantum probability drive wasn't just a new weapon, it was a complete reimagining of how humanity approached space travel and combat. While the Nexians had spent millennia perfecting their mastery of known physics, humanity had been quietly exploring the edges of what was possible. The drive creates a field of quantum uncertainty around the ship, Sarah continued, advancing through her presentation. Within this field, we can select favorable probability states. In simple terms, we choose the reality where we succeed. A murmur ran through the assembled leaders. It sounded impossible, but humanity's history was written in impossibilities overcome. The first flight at Kitty Hawk, breaking the sound barrier. The first steps on Mars. Each achievement had been deemed impossible until someone decided otherwise. The risks. General Laura Hayes asked, her cybernetic eye whirring as it analyzed the data. Sarah didn't hesitate. Catastrophic. If the field collapses while active, the ship and everyone aboard would experience every possible quantum state simultaneously. The human mind isn't designed to exist in infinite realities at once. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. They were asking crews to pilot ships that could literally tear their consciousness apart across multiple dimensions, but the alternative was watching humanity be relegated to the status of an interesting scientific curiosity by the Nexians. "We've found a pilot," Admiral Rodriguez announced, breaking the silence. "Captain Alina Santos. She's already volunteered." Sarah's heart skipped a beat. She knew Alina. They had worked together during the early testing phases. The captain had a unique way of thinking about quantum mechanics, describing it not as a set of equations, but as a language humanity was just beginning to learn. The next 3 months were a blur of testing, modifications, and carefully controlled experiments. The UES Prometheus, a standard destroyer, was retrofitted with the quantum drive in secret. Every test brought new challenges, new impossibilities to overcome. The first full power test nearly ended in disaster. The quantum field had stabilized, but reality around the ship became fluid. Crew members reported seeing multiple versions of themselves, timelines bleeding together like watercolors in rain. Captain Santos had remained calm, treating the confusion of quantum states as simply another obstacle to navigate. Reality is negotiable, Elena had said during the debriefing, her eyes bright with the certainty of someone who had seen beyond the veil of conventional physics. The Nexians think they're masters of the universe because they understand its laws perfectly. But we've learned something they never considered. The laws are more like guidelines. As Sarah made the final calibrations to the drive, she couldn't help but think about the philosophical implications. The Nexians, for all their advanced technology, were trapped by their own certainty. They had stopped looking for new possibilities because they believed they had found all the answers. Humanity, eternally curious and never satisfied, had taken a different path. Where the Nexians saw limits, humans saw challenges. Where they saw impossibility, humans saw inspiration. The quantum probability drive wasn't just a technological achievement. It was a testament to humanity's greatest strength, the ability to imagine a different reality and then make it exist. The day the Prometheus launched on its first combat mission, Sarah watched from the lunar observation deck. Her son, Lieutenant Chen, was aboard as communications officer. The quantum drive hummed with possibilities, carrying humanity's hopes into the void. "Good hunting," she whispered as the ship disappeared into the quantum foam of spacetime. "Show them what impossible really means." The weight of stars pressed down on humanity, but they had learned long ago that the best way to carry a burden was to turn it into wings. The Nexians were about to learn that lesson too, along with the danger of underestimating a species that saw physics itself as merely another frontier to explore. Silent thunder. High Commander Vextal of the Nexian Empire stood on the crystalline bridge of the eternal clarity, their faceted eyes reflecting the holographic displays surrounding them. The human vessel, this UES Prometheus, hung before them in space, seemingly oblivious to the overwhelming force arrayed against it. "Most peculiar," Sub-Commander Rylith observed, their crystalline form shifting through shades of puzzlement. "Their energy signatures don't match any known configuration. Are we certain these readings are accurate?" Vextal's outer shell rippled with amusement. The Nexian Empire had catalogued thousands of species across their expansion, and humans had initially seemed refreshingly straightforward. Their technology was crude but functional, their social structures simple but effective. They should have accepted their place in the grand hierarchy of species with gratitude. "Their defiance defies mathematical logic," Vextal stated, geometric patterns of certainty flowing across their surface. "But it will serve as an excellent case study in primitive species psychology." Begin recording. The Nexian battle fleet moved with perfect precision, each ship's position calculated to 7 decimal places. Their crystalline hulls channeled energy with quantum efficiency. Their weapons transformed solar power into concentrated destruction. This was how space combat should be: elegant, mathematical, inevitable. Multiple warnings issued. The communications officer reported. They respond with unclear metaphors about mathematics and language. The meaning is difficult to translate. Vextal felt a flicker of irritation disturb their carefully maintained molecular symmetry. Humans had proven surprisingly resistant to proper categorization. They built their ships with inferior materials yet achieved remarkable results. They used outdated computational systems yet solved complex problems. They ignored proven technological progression paths in favor of seemingly random innovations. "Begin the demonstration," Vextal commanded. Standard subjugation pattern Theta 9. The order rippled through the fleet's crystalline network. Particle lances powered up, their energy signatures forming perfect geometric patterns in space. The human vessel would be disabled with surgical precision, its crew preserved for study. The data would be invaluable in understanding why some species refuse to accept the natural order. What happened next shattered more than just Nexian expectations. The Prometheus's energy signature changed in ways that violated 17 fundamental laws of physics. Space itself seemed to hiccup, reality becoming uncertain around the human vessel. Vextal's sensory crystals struggled to process what they were seeing. Impossible, Rylith whispered, their crystalline form clouding with confusion. They're generating quantum probability fields at a macro scale. The energy requirements alone ruled. Evasive action. Vextal commanded, but their perfect formation had become a liability. The quantum distortions spread like cracks in reality, turning their precisely calculated positions into death traps. The first cruiser shattered as localized physics went mad. The second imploded as probability itself turned hostile. The third simply ceased to exist in their universe, its crew's screams echoing across dimensions that shouldn't have been accessible. They've weaponized uncertainty itself, Vextal realized, their perfect crystalline form showing stress fractures. How can they control such chaos? The answer came in the form of the Prometheus appearing simultaneously at 12 different positions, each one theoretically impossible, yet undeniably real. The humans weren't controlling the chaos. They were embracing it, riding waves of probability like solar surfers through a stellar storm. Across the fleet, carefully maintained order descended into entropy. Weapon systems calculated their own destruction with perfect precision. Navigation computers plotted courses through probability space that ended in disaster. The crystalline networks that linked ship to ship became conduits for impossible information that drove their quantum processors into recursive loops. They're not primitive, Rylith gasped, watching another cruiser twist itself into geometries that shouldn't exist. They're not even playing the same game. All our assumptions. Vextal understood too late. The Nexian Empire had achieved its dominance through perfect understanding and implementation of universal laws. They had spent millennia refining their technology along proven paths, achieving mastery over the possible. Humans, in their beautiful insanity, had simply decided to change what was possible. Send the surrender signal, Vextal commanded, watching their perfect fleet tear itself apart under the weight of infinite probability. Before they show us any more impossible things. As reality stabilized and the quantum storms subsided, Vextal received the humans' response. They offered peace, cooperation, equality. The very things they had requested at first contact. There was no demand for reparations, no imposition of technological hierarchies. Add a note to the xenological archives, Vextal instructed as their surviving ships limped away from the battlefield. Humans do not follow paths. They forge them. They do not accept limits. They challenge them. And most importantly, they do not recognize impossibility as anything more than a temporary obstacle. The stars watched silently as the mighty Nexian fleet retreated, leaving behind a single human ship and a profound lesson about the danger of assuming that progress only moves in one direction. Ripples of change. The grand assembly of the Galactic Conclave erupted into chaos as the recording of the battle ended. Representatives from 100 species argued in a cacophony of languages, their voices echoing through the vast chamber. The defeat of a Nexian battle fleet by a single human vessel had shattered more than just ships. It had broken the fundamental assumptions that had governed interstellar relations for millennia. Ambassador Zara Williams of Earth sat quietly in humanity's newly granted seat, watching the pandemonium with careful eyes. After the battle, the Conclave had suddenly discovered that humanity deserved representation after all. Funny how quantum probability weapons could change political probabilities too. This is unprecedented, declared Archminister Kivan of the Silicon Collective, their photonic matrix flickering with agitation. The Nexians have dominated space warfare for 3,000 years. Their tactical algorithms were considered perfect. Perhaps, Zora responded, her voice carrying across the chamber with practiced diplomacy. Perfection itself was the flaw. When you believe you've reached the pinnacle, you stop looking up. The assembly chamber itself reflected the established order that humanity had so thoroughly disrupted. Species were seated according to their technological development level, a hierarchy that had remained largely unchanged for centuries. Until now. The human should share this quantum probability technology, demanded Representative Yith of the crystalline Concordat, their faceted form refracting light anxiously. For the sake of galactic stability. Zara allowed herself a small smile. The technology isn't the point. Any species could have developed it. The real question is, why didn't you? That question echoed through the chamber like a thunderclap. The assembled representatives fell silent, faced with an uncomfortable truth. They had all followed the same technological progression paths, building upon established principles, refining existing technologies. None had thought to question whether the path itself might be flawed. In the weeks following the battle, scientific communities across the galaxy have begun re-examining human research papers they had previously dismissed as primitive or misguided. They found a species that approached problems from angles that seemed absurd until they worked. Humans didn't just think outside the box. They questioned why boxes needed to exist at all. "We've received reports," announced Director Selk of the Science Council, that 3 different species have already successfully replicated aspects of human quantum theory. Not by copying our technology, but by finally understanding our methodology. The implications rippled through the assembly. Humanity hadn't just changed the balance of power. They had demonstrated that power itself could be redefined. The rigid hierarchies that had governed galactic society were beginning to crack. In the aftermath of the battle, the UES Prometheus had become something of a legend. Captain Alina Santos and her crew were invited to dozens of worlds, not as curiosities to be studied, but as teachers. The quantum probability drive was impressive, but the real lesson was in how humanity had conceived of it in the first place. The Nexian Empire has proposed a joint research initiative, Zara announced to the assembly. Not to study our technology, but to understand our scientific philosophy. They've realized that their greatest weakness wasn't their ships or weapons. It was their certainty that they knew all the answers. The ripples of change spread beyond military and scientific spheres. Cultural exchange programs flourished as species realized that humans approached everything. Art, music, cuisine, literature. With the same boundless creativity they applied to physics. Human children's questions like why and what if began to be heard in schools across the galaxy. But how can we maintain order? Demanded the regulatory minister of the geometric hegemony. If everyone begins questioning established principles, pursuing random innovations. Random, Zara interrupted gently. No, humanity's approach isn't random. It's curious. We don't ignore established principles. We ask why they became established in the first place. Sometimes the answer is because it works. Sometimes it's because no one thought to try something else. In the space docks orbiting Earth, the Prometheus underwent repairs while ships from across the galaxy came to observe it. But they weren't studying its technology anymore. They were studying its battle scars, each one a testament to humanity's willingness to attempt the impossible. Dr. Sarah Chen had begun teaching at the newly established Galactic Science Academy, where her lectures on probability as possibility attracted students from species that had once dismissed humans as barely sentient. Her simple message resonated across cultural and physiological boundaries. The universe wasn't a set of rules to be followed, but a set of questions to be asked. We offer the galaxy a gift, Zora concluded, addressing the still stunned assembly. Not our technology, not our weapons, but our perspective. The understanding that impossible is just a word, and progress isn't a path to follow. It's a horizon to chase. The ripples of that single battle continued to spread, touching distant stars and ancient civilizations. The galaxy was changing, not through force or technological superiority, but through the simple, profound power of asking what if, and refusing to accept impossible as an answer. Tomorrow's dawn. 10 years later, the Quantum Academy, Earth. The crystalline spires of the new Quantum Academy stretched toward the stars, their architecture defying conventional geometry in ways that would have been impossible before the integration. Human design merged seamlessly with Nexian crystal tech, creating a structure that existed in multiple probability states simultaneously, a physical embodiment of the changes that had transformed galactic society. Captain Elena Santos, now Admiral Santos, stood at the graduation podium, looking out over an audience that would have been unimaginable a decade ago. Young minds from across the galaxy sat together, their diverse forms united by a shared hunger for knowledge and possibility. 10 years ago, she began, her voice carrying across the quantum-enhanced acoustics. A single ship changed the course of galactic history, not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by demonstrating the simple truth: the universe is not a set of rules to be followed, but a conversation to be joined. In the decades since the Battle of Broken Certainties, as historians now called it, the galaxy had transformed. The rigid hierarchies of the past had dissolved, replaced by a more fluid exchange of ideas and innovations. Species that had once competed for technological superiority now collaborated to explore new possibilities. The Nexians, perhaps surprisingly, had become some of humanity's strongest allies. Their crystalline minds, once trapped in patterns of absolute certainty, now applied their mathematical precision to exploring probability itself. The combination of human creativity and Nexian precision had opened doors that neither species could have approached alone. Your predecessors asked, "What is possible?" Elena continued, gesturing to the holographic displays showing breakthrough after breakthrough. You have learned to ask, "What could be possible?" That difference, that shift in perspective, has changed everything. The displays showed the achievements of the past decade: ships that sailed on probability waves between stars, cities that existed in quantum harmony with their environments, medical techniques that explored multiple healing timelines simultaneously. But more importantly, they showed people of different species working together, each bringing their unique perspectives to shared challenges. Dr. Sarah Chen, now Chancellor of the Academy, sat in the front row beside her old friend High Commander Vextol, who had become one of the strongest advocates for cross-species collaboration. Their unlikely friendship symbolized the new era: the warrior who had commanded a fleet and the scientist who had changed the rules of reality, now united in pushing the boundaries of what was possible. But our greatest achievement, Elena continued, her voice softening, isn't technological at all. Look around you. In this room are beings who, a decade ago, would have been separated by artificial barriers of advancement and hierarchy. Today, you share knowledge, dreams, and possibilities. You don't just accept diversity. You understand that diversity itself is strength. The quantum probability drive that had started it all seemed almost primitive now compared to what had followed. It had opened the door, but the real revolution was in how people thought about problems, about progress, about possibility itself. The Silicon Collective had discovered that uncertainty could enhance their quantum processing. The crystalline Concordat had learned that imperfection could lead to stronger structures. The geometric hegemony had found beauty in asymmetry. Each species had brought their own insights to the growing field of probability mechanics, creating something greater than any could have achieved alone. As you leave these halls, Elena concluded, remember that the greatest discoveries don't come from knowing all the answers. They come from being willing to question everything, especially your own assumptions. The universe is infinite in its possibilities, but only if we have the courage to explore them. In orbit above Earth, the UES Prometheus had been preserved as a museum ship, its battle-scarred hull a reminder of the day humanity had proven that impossible was just a word. But its real legacy wasn't in its quantum drive or its victory over the Nexian fleet. Its legacy lived in every classroom, where students asked, why not? In every laboratory where researchers dared to challenge established theories, in every collaboration that brought different species together to explore new possibilities. The galaxy had learned that progress wasn't a ladder to climb, but a web to weave, each strand strengthened by the diversity of its creators. The human gift of questioning, of imagining, of daring to be wrong in the pursuit of being innovative, had transformed not just technology, but the very nature of galactic civilization. As the graduation ceremony ended and the next generation of explorers and innovators prepared to make their mark on the universe, the quantum probability fields around the Academy shifted and sparkled. In one probability state, they reflected the stars above. In another, they showed stars yet to be born. In all of them, they reflected the light of minds working together to chase impossible dreams and make them real. The lone human ship that had once faced down a mighty fleet had done more than win a battle. It had sparked a revolution of thought, proving that the greatest technology wasn't one that gave you power over the universe, but one that helped you understand your place within it, and the infinite possibilities that waited when different perspectives came together to imagine something new.